It is Wednesday, October 9th, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. It was very fun, get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. I know I don't have too many descriptors there, but yeah, it was fun. A lot of takedowns. Lots and lots of takedowns. We were doing this really neat one where you grab the sleeve of your opponent and you grab the collar of your opponent and then you just kind of pull them down. It's pretty cool. But I gotta tell you, this is one realm of my jiu-jitsu that I need a lot of fucking work on, man. I mean, a lot. The reason I say that is because I know that I got the capability of being really, really good on my standing game. You know, it's just I have a little bit of trouble figuring out exactly how to position myself, you know, especially when you get into the clinch, to where I'm able to, you know, drop down and get that single leg or the double leg even, you know, and pull the pipe, yank that fucker off to the ground. I don't know. For whatever reason, I seem to have a little bit of trouble with that. And, you know, I've got a lower center of gravity, and so it's usually pretty challenging for people to get me off my feet. Although this girl did today, and I was quite surprised. Not because it was a girl doing it, but because she was so fucking swift at it. I mean, I did not see it coming at all. We were doing this King of the Hill thing, and yeah, she stepped right in, swept me right off my feet. I was just like, wow, okay, cool. You know, I obviously have to work on my takedown defense, because, man, I mean, and I'll tell you what, even if I was more skilled, she probably still would have taken me down, because that was such a swift movement on her part that, you know, it was one of those perfectly timed things, you know, and it's like, every once in a while you get caught like that, where, you know, you can do all kinds of preparation and whatnot, and just shit happens. So, hats off. Definitely swift. But, yeah, so, lots of takedowns, and like I said, I could spend a year of doing nothing but takedowns, and although that might not be really all that great on my noggin, it is something that would definitely help out my game. I don't know, I've always had trouble with the idea of flipping people and stuff like that. I don't know, it's just one of those things. Although it's funny, I can do some sweeps on the ground relatively easily. Like if somebody's on my back, one of the things I like to do is reach back and grab their hip and then swing my hip out from behind them and sit down. And then, yeah, flip them. It's pretty cool. Anyways, as far as what we're going to get into today, as far as what we're going to do for material, I haven't the slightest clue. Not having Twitter, it's had an interesting effect. Usually there's all kinds of articles that I like to cover on my Twitter feed. Without Twitter, I don't have that. So I'm actually going to have to do a little data mining during the old music break here. But let's go ahead and throw it down with a little bit of body count here. Ski Mask Way, here on Coin Metal. And that was Slayer with War Ensemble. And so I did a little digging around, a little scrounging, and damn it, my program's hanging up on me. Hopefully it's actually broadcasting at the moment and it's just snagging on the GUI. Wouldn't that be nice? Come on, today would be nice. Oh well, we're going to have to disconnect and then reconnect and then all that business. Oh well, we run into these issues occasionally. There we go. Alright, so as far as what we're going to get into today, I did a little hunting around, and I did have one article that I want to touch on, given in light of recent incidents concerning myself and Twitter. And yeah, you guys are probably gonna like this. It's on the register.co.uk. Twitter No, really, we're very sorry we sold your security info for a boatload of cash. This is by Sean Nichols in San Francisco, authored October 9th, 2019 at 12:34. Twitter says it was just an accident that caused the microblogging giant to let advertisers use private information to better target their marketing materials at users. The social networking giant on Tuesday admitted to a, quote, error that let advertisers have access to the private information customers had given Twitter in order to place additional security protections on their accounts, i.e. their phone numbers. Quote, we recently discovered that when you provided an email address or phone number for safety or security purposes, for example, two-factor authentication, this data may have inadvertently been used for advertising purposes, specifically in our tailored audiences and partner audiences advertising system, Twitter said. Quote, when an advertiser uploaded their marketing list, we may have matched people on Twitter to their list based on the email or phone number of the Twitter account holder provided for safety and security purposes. This was an error, and we apologize. Jesus Christ. Twitter assures users that no, quote, personal information was shared, though we're not sure what Twitter would consider personal information if your phone number and email address do not meet the bar. Quote, we cannot say with certainty how many people were impacted by this, but in an effort to be transparent, we wanted to make everyone aware. No personal data was ever shared externally with our partners or any other third parties, the mea culpa reads. Quote, as of September 17th, we have addressed the issue that allowed this to occur, and we are no longer using phone numbers or email addresses collected for safety or security purposes for advertising. Why would you do that to begin with? Fucking assholes. Earlier this year, Facebook was handed a $5 billion fine by the U.S. government for playing fast and loose with the personal information of its customers. It's not clear what this incident could mean for Twitter legally, if anything. The FTC declined to comment on the matter. Users, however, do not look to be happy with either the mishap or the way Twitter is handling the disclosure. Matthew Green says, no problem, Twitter. These things happen. Even if it wasn't unintentional, let's be honest. Your company selling us advertising is a lot more important than the trust and safety of your user base. And Twitter support says, we recently found that some email addresses and phone numbers provided for account security may have been used unintentionally for advertising purposes. This is no longer happening, and we wanted to give you more clarity about the situation. And Drew Harwell says, perhaps, and I'm just spitballing here, the database Twitter uses to guard the security of people around the world could be separate from the one selling us stuff. Also, maybe they could tell us about this aw shucks whoopsie daisy sooner than 21 days after it's been addressed. Aside from being a violation of privacy and potential legal liability for Twitter, the incident will have the added effect of making users less safe by discouraging them from using phone numbers and email verification as additional levels of security. All in all, this is a bad look for Twitter that isn't likely to go away anytime soon. Yeah. And what's worse about it is this. Twitter will suspend your account just to check and verify whether or not you're a real person. And I don't even know if it takes somebody to report you first for them to do this, but they make you give them a phone number, specifically a phone number, to verify that you're a real person. Okay, so they make you give up your phone number, and then they sell your phone number information to their vendors, their advertisers. I mean, you know, the thing of it is that they don't actually need that information, and this is again one of those problems where if you do not need information, the worst thing you can do is collect it. You know, because then, of course, you're tempted to try and monetize it. It's like, well, fuck, we're storing it, and these guys like that kind of information, so we'll just sell that information to those guys. Hey, what the hell, right? You know, I mean, if you do not provide the temptation or the incentive by forcing entities such as Twitter to retain all kinds of data or information, or just not caring about them storing data and information about you, despite the fact that it's probably a massive violation of the Fourth Amendment, that you know, without that temptation of having that information, you know, that they would be less tempted to monetize it. Or, better yet, provide them a counter incentive. Like, if you store that information, we're going to fucking sue you, or at least open you up to class action lawsuits for it. But, you know, again, this is the double-edged sword of living in the surveillance age, where, you know, governments and corporations, they want to know fucking everything about you for whatever purposes. And, you know, that's never been really clear to me. You know, they say it's for terrorism purposes on government side, but I think it's just as likely that it's for executing terror upon you. You know, if they don't like something you're saying on Twitter or something, oh, you're a political opponent, you're a threat, we can use national security as an excuse to go neutralize you, and we can track you because you got a GPS locator on you, and we can record everything you're doing. We can be recording everything you're doing and monitoring everything you're doing, so we can decide exactly when we want to perform our surgical strike and eliminate you. I know that sounds really conspiratorial and whatnot, but I'm just looking at, of all the things that this technology can be used for, that seems to be the biggest focus, is monitoring us like a bunch of fucking lab rats. And honestly, I feel kind of insulted by that. Anyway, moving along. Let's see here. Oh, fucking Forbes. Neutralize my privacy specifically to fucking see shit on their website. I hate this. Fucking hate this shit. There's a reason why I have a fucking ad blocker on Forbes, and it's because of the same shit that we're talking about with Twitter. Because you fucks track my information, then you sell my information and monetize me like I'm a fucking cow. Fuck you. Anyway, got this thing. It's on Forbes.com. DuckDuckGo research makes bullish case for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. This is by Kyle Torpy. And that name sounds very familiar. No. Fucking. I've got to make a minor modification to this web page. Fucking videos and shit. Anyway, continuing on. DuckDuckGo, which is a privacy-focused online search engine, recently surveyed the general public's view on the importance of privacy on the internet. The results indicated that people care about the amount of information being collected about them online, and many respondents even claimed they have taken action to better protect their personal data. Quote, "The results are clear. Not only are privacy concerns widespread, but people are indeed taking action," said DuckDuckGo blog post regarding the study. This greater interest in online privacy should have a positive impact on Bitcoin adoption over the long term, as the cryptocurrency is basically the financial equivalent of deleting one's Facebook account. Well, kinda. Puts you on a different database. DuckDuckGo research shows people care about their privacy. Yes, of course it is. According to the DuckDuckGo survey, which involved a random sample of 1,114 Americans aged 18 and older, nearly 80% of respondents adjusted their privacy settings or reduced their use of social media in the past year. Additionally, almost a quarter of those surveyed claimed they had deleted or deactivated social media accounts due to privacy concerns. The changes social media users have made to their accounts include the removal of location tags on posts and taking their profiles private. Outside of the social media realm, 38.6% of respondents in the survey said they have used a password manager in the past year, and 24.1% said they had used a virtual private network. Yeah, the rest of the ones probably just didn't respond to that one, that particular thing. Yeah, people like their privacy and equivocate it with their security, and there's obvious reasons for that. You know, I've never given my phone number to Twitter, and that there's reasons I have for that. And in retrospect, you know, people call me paranoid and whatnot, but here we have an instance, you know, just the article previously there where Twitter was monetizing that data, where they were selling your email addresses and your phone numbers. You know. But that's specifically why I don't give them that information. They don't need that information, and them having that information is just a danger to you. Yeah. And so, you know, I've talked a lot about lightning on this show, and it's because the very simple reason is that in the longer term, I believe that lightning would be akin to like Facebook or Twitter, you know, where you would have a Lightning Network service that's doing all your transactions for you, you know. And so yeah, I got this thing. It's on CoinDesk.com. Bitcoin's dropping Lightning capacity might not be a bad thing. I don't see it as a bad thing anyway. Continuing, this is by Alyssa Hertig. It was authored October 8th, 2019 at 9 UTC. If you're a fan of Bitcoin and the nascent Lightning Network, this graph looks disheartening at first glance. The Lightning Network is supposed to be Bitcoin's superhero, taking the cryptocurrency to new heights by tackling its toughest and most obvious problem. If cryptocurrency is ever going to go mainstream, it needs to support 1 million times more transactions than it currently does, which is no easy feat. Actually, it's a very easy feat. It just needs to increase the block size. But by the looks of this graph, Lightning appears to be losing momentum. The amount of funds locked up in the two-layer network looks to be decreasing, seeming to indicate that fewer people are using it as a payment method. A Lightning channel is like a gateway to the rest of the network, allowing a user to send a payment to any other user, assuming, of course, there's a connection between the users and another user. While Lightning is still considered beta software, and thus risky to use, Bitcoiners have been so enthusiastic about it and using it anyway, for games and beyond, chanting the unofficial slogan, "Reckless." As Lightning's capacity increased rapidly over its first year, devotees cheered it on social media. The catch is that while this number is decreasing, Lightning use may actually still be increasing because of increased privacy of Lightning channels and other channel optimizations. Quote, "There's no way of knowing the capacity of the Lightning Network. We can only know the public channel's capacity, not private," Roy Scheinfeld, CEO of Breeze, told CoinDesk. At least one company says that, at least in their experience, Lightning payments are picking up. Quote, "We are doing increasing dollar value volumes on the Lightning Network. What I am seeing is the price going up, and thus people need less coins locked up in the channels to maintain spending power. And that's by Fast Bitcoin's MD Danny Brewster told CoinDesk. Yeah, whatever. A tale of two nodes. So while so far watching this number has been a spectator sport, football for tech geeks, it might not be for much longer. This number will grow harder to track over time. That's because many Lightning wallets do not advertise whether their channels exist to the rest of the network by default. Under the hood, there are, quote, advertised channels, which advertise their existence to the rest of the Lightning network, and non-advertised channels which don't. Normal channels used by everyday users who just want to buy pizza and draw dicks online with Lightning don't need to be advertised. Quote, many wallets in the past few months have been released which default to non-advertised channels. These channels don't show up on any public metrics, so relying on the public metrics alone only really shows half the picture, Lightning Labs CTO Leolu Osuntoken told CoinDesk. Generally, advertised channels only need to be used by routing nodes, so the sturdier nodes that get payments from one person to another and need to be online all the time. Zap creator Jack Mallers argued, quote, it's only responsible that anyone who isn't a routing node uses private, non-advertised channels. Some go as far as to argue that the public capacity is a useless indicator because it doesn't capture all, or even most, of the money in the Lightning network. Because more apps have been starting to follow these best practices, Scheinfeld guesses that, quote, most channels are private, noting that his wallet Breeze has opened thousands of private channels just in the last couple months alone. Breeze opened thousands of private channels in the past 2 months. Lightning Labs Autopilot also opens private channels, he said. This is one reason why many developers see Lightning as providing more privacy than on-chain Bitcoin transactions. While Bitcoin has a reputation of giving users anonymity, transactions are actually public. Lightning hides a bit more of the transaction details. Quote, if a regular Bitcoin transaction is similar to uploading your bank statement to a public website, a Lightning Network transaction is similar to showing each merchant you pay how much money you have in one specific compartment of your wallet. You're still revealing some information, but much less, as Lightning startup Sherbets wrote. Garbage Day. Another reason the capacity is decreasing is because some entities are closing down Lightning channels that were wasteful. Quote, based on my knowledge, the decrease in channels is simply due to node operators being rational by closing out channels that have been open for some time, but which don't have notable forwarding activity, Osuntoken said. For instance, there's one famous and mysterious anonymous Lightning user by the name of LN Big who has opened many Lightning channels. They initially debuted by pouring 300 Bitcoin into the Lightning network, giving new meaning to Lightning's, quote, reckless catchphrase. Quote, at the beginning of my activity, I opened many channels in the hope that they will be used, and due to the imperfection of Autopilot, the person behind LMBIG told CoinDesk. But the secretive developer said those channels weren't really used much at all. They were just opened and sitting there. Quote, but time has shown that many channels have not been used once for 2 to 4 months, for example, and the funds in them are nonetheless blocked, LNBIG continued. The funds are blocked, as LNBIG puts it, because of the way that Lightning works. A Lightning channel is like a gateway to the rest of the network, allowing a user to send a payment to any other user. But when someone opens a channel with someone else and doesn't use it, then other people can't use that gateway. So it makes sense to free up that capacity and wait to see if a new channel opens want to use the capacity, which is exactly what LNBIG decided to do. LNBIG posted a Twitter poll before following through with closing these channels, arguing that the only downside would be the, quote, psychological effect that Lightning's capacity would fall down to 825 Bitcoin. As the decrease in Lightning's capacity shows, encouraged LNBIG to follow through. Yeah. You know, they can swing it any way they want to, but I'm pretty sure that the shine is kind of wearing off of Lightning Network, in that you know, people are coming to that realization, that same thing that I've been repeating for years now, that the growth in Lightning Network would only encourage legacy payment service providers to take over payments processing within Bitcoin. You know, it would provide the handles in which to grab a hold of it with. But you know, and it's really simple to see that too. You watch the price for Bitcoin transaction fees, you know, raised by 10 times or 20 times or 100 times or 1,000 times. And it's kind of obvious to figure out that limited amount of block space is going to do nothing but get more expensive over time. Unless, of course, it is expanded. And again, you didn't hear anything about that in that article. That the obvious alternative to creating off-chain transactions and payment channels for them is growing the block size. I mean, it's an obvious and cheap way out. And we've seen that it works. You know, BSV and Bitcoin Cash are both have capacities for blocks that are much larger than 1 megabyte, and we've seen that they work. So, and make the transactions a lot cheaper to do. You know, you want to talk about something that will boost adoption. Well, you know, when I'm paying as much for a transaction fee on the Bitcoin network as I am for a transaction at an ATM, it's kind of lost a little bit of its shine. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with a little more music. And as far as where to go with that, now let's go with a little bit of Anthrax here, The Devil You Know, here on Coin Metal. And that was Pantera with A New Level. Yeah. And so next, we covered DuckDuckGo. We covered this guy. This one caught me because, and I did a little bit of follow-up on it because I want to know a little bit more about the background behind this. But it's, to me, this is hilarious because, you know, Facebook, they are not the first social media outlet to try and associate themselves with cryptocurrency in some way, shape, or form, and it hasn't really worked out yet. I mean, there have been uses for cryptocurrencies within Twitter and other platforms, other social media platforms, but Facebook, in their folly, I guess, they want to try and relive some of those failed attempts at associating a cryptocurrency with a social media outlet. But it seems they're getting a little bit of scoop action here. And this one's on Coindesk.com. New Libra fork will create permissionless stablecoin free of corporate control. Fucking Libra hasn't even launched yet. This is by Christine Kim. It was authored October 9th, 2019 at 9:30 UTC. 30 different blockchain companies and nonprofit organizations plan to fork the Facebook-led Libra crypto project to build their own permissionless version dubbed Open Libra. God damn. It's hilarious. Announced at the Ethereum Developer Conference, DevCon, by Lucas Geiger, co-founder of blockchain infrastructure startup Wireline, Open Libra will function as a stablecoin pegged to the actual Libra cryptocurrency. Libra is currently scheduled to go live late next year. Quote, "We're going to fork the code, fork the community, and create a new cryptocurrency called Open Libra," said Geiger during his presentation at DevCon. Quote, "There is no token sale, no equity, and no company behind this initiative." Open Libra's core team includes representatives from blockchain projects including Cosmos, Web3 Foundation, Democracy Earth, and others, as well as non-profit organizations such as the Danish Red Cross. Geiger explained that, quote, "A generous grant from the Interchain Foundation would support Open Libra research alongside personal funds. The Interchain Foundation is a non-profit dedicated to supporting Cosmos network development. Quote, "This covers our funding for several months, but there are other grants coming in," Geiger said. Facebook first unveiled Libra in June, detailing a stablecoin that will be pegged to a basket of fiat currencies and government bonds. So far, the Open Libra project has published a permissionless version of the Libra virtual machine on GitHub. Unlike Facebook's Libra, the code computations on Open Libra, called MoveMint, will run atop Tendermint blockchain software specifically designed for use on public blockchain platforms such as Cosmos. Quote, "Anything running on Facebook's Libra you can just drag and drop to Open Libra. Finances will work the same. The code will work the same," Geiger told CoinDesk. Geiger explained that he and others didn't want a, quote, "a cartel company with the ethics of Uber and the censorship of Visa to be sole proprietors of the Libra stablecoin." Still, Geiger said the idea for Libra and its technology was not only brilliant, but, quote, "likely to become the currency of the internet." Pfft, no. Geiger summed up the sentiment saying, quote, "In Libra we trust, in Facebook we don't." Looking ahead, Geiger and the rest of the Open Libra team plan to work on building a robust scheme to oversee the Open Libra platform. Quote, "This is a governance problem." Governments can attack Visa and MasterCard and Facebook from different angles, and that makes for a fragile reserve currency, Geiger said, adding, quote, "We have less regulatory exposure than Facebook. Governments have less leverage on us. We gain strength by having more members that are decentralized, not just geographically, but politically and economically." An update on October 9th, 1538 UTC, Chainlink was previously listed as an Open Libra partner in this article. CoinDesk confirmed that both Geiger and Chainlink's Sergey Nazarov that the listing was a typo in Geiger's slide deck. The story has been updated. So, there you have it. Libra isn't even launched yet, and these guys are talking about forking it. I don't know what to say about this, really, you know. And so, you know, like I said, I did a little bit of digging, and let's get into this thing. They've got a website, openlibra.io. Open Libra, an open platform for financial inclusion, not run by Facebook. As if that's the only problem with fucking Libra, right? Introducing Open Libra. Open Libra is a technology platform and currency for financial inclusion, an alternative to Facebook's Libra that places emphasis on open governance and economic decentralization. Yeah, a bunch of bullshit. The Open Libra project was formed by some of the best-in-class companies and nonprofit foundations working in applied cryptography and blockchains, such as the Interchain Foundation, maintainers of the Cosmos network, and the Danish Red Cross. Our strategy is to build upon Libra's strength, but extend it where needed. Open Libra aims to be technically move language and financially compatible Libra coin, embracing what is powerful but also replacing what is concerning in a non-adversarial way. What are the problems with Facebook's approach? Facebook and partners are creating a digital currency and banking ecosystem which will reach 4 billion humans. Their goal is to replace the existing financial infrastructure and compete with traditional banks and central banks across the world. As designed, the Libra platform, quote, 1, will be distributed but not decentralized. Number 2, will require permissions to interact with. Number 3, will not have privacy guarantees. Number 4, will be run by a plutocracy. A number of features of Libra are useful and perhaps transformative to the most vulnerable, but their stated plans may lead to worrying outcomes. The Libra coin would be governed by a closed group of corporations. People around the world, even if not FB users, will be constituents of the Libra network. However, will have no direct recourse to the policies of the association. If Libra becomes the Internet's central bank, the need for a more inclusive form of governance becomes urgent. Value flows to the founders. Value created within the Libra ecosystem will be captured by the few corporations that are already part of the consortium. To date, Facebook has no plan for including more partners in the consortium or redistributing proceeds with more actors within their network. Surveillance finance. One's ability to engage financially, ergo borrowing in Libra, will potentially be determined by their social graph and online activity. Despite pushback from nation-states, we believe that Facebook is likely to succeed in their goal. OECD governments will be focused on their own outcomes and in reality have little legislative power to leverage against a transnational force such as Facebook's Libra. For that reason, we are creating Open Libra. Let's see here. And so, yeah, I with regard to that, I think it's just exchanging one set of slave masters for another. You know, they talk about governance and whatnot, but they're, let's see here, they were talking about, I think, the Tendermint thingamabobber, I guess the Tendermint blockchain or something to that effect. But anyway, we covered Open Libra's statement there. Yeah, here we go. Open Libra, called Movement, will run atop Tendermint blockchain software specifically designed for use on public blockchain platforms such as Cosmos. Okay, so we got that. So let's go into what's Tendermint. What is Tendermint? Tendermint is software for securely and consistently replicating an application on many machines. By securely, we mean that Tendermint works even if up to 1/3 of the machines fail in arbitrary ways. By consistently, we mean that every non-faulty machine sees the same transaction log and computes the same state. Secure and consistent replication is a fundamental problem in distributed systems. It plays a critical role in the fault tolerance of a broad range of applications, from currencies to elections to infrastructure orchestration and beyond. The ability to tolerate machines failing in arbitrary ways, including becoming malicious, is known as Byzantine fault tolerance, BFT. The theory of BFT is decades old, but software implementations have only become popular recently due largely to the success of Bitcoin, blockchain technology like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Blockchain technology is a transformation of BFT in a more modern setting with emphasis on peer-to-peer networking and cryptographic authentication. The name derives from the way transactions are batched in blocks, where each block contains a cryptographic hash of the previous one, forming a chain. In practice, the blockchain data structure actually optimizes BFT design. Tendermint consists of two chief technical components: a blockchain consensus engine and a generic application interface. The consensus engine, called Tendermint Core, ensures that the same transactions are recorded on every machine in the same order. The application interface, called the Application Blockchain Interface, ABCI, enables the transactions to be processed in any programming language. Unlike other blockchain and consensus solutions, which come pre-packaged and built-in state machines, with built-in state machines, like a fancy key-value store or quirky scripting language, developers can use Tendermint for BFT state machine replication of applications written in whatever programming language and development environment is right for them. Tendermint is designed to be easy to use, simple to understand, highly performant, and useful for a wide variety of distributed applications. Tendermint versus X. Tendermint is broadly similar to two classes of software. The first class consists of distributed key-value stores like Zookeeper, etcd, and Console, which use non-BFT consensus. The second class is known as blockchain technology and consists of both cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum and alternative distributed ledger designs like Hyperledger's Burrow. Zookeeper, etcd, Console. Zookeeper, etcd, and Console are all implementations of a key-value store atop a classical non-BFT consensus algorithm. Zookeeper uses a version of Paxos called Zookeeper Atomic Broadcast, while etcd and Console use the Raft consensus algorithm, which is much younger and simpler. A typical cluster contains 3 to 5 machines and can tolerate crash failures up to one half of the machines, but even a single Byzantine fault can destroy the system. Each offering provides a slightly different implementation of a featureful key value store, but all are generally focused around providing basic services to distributed systems such as dynamic configuration, service discovery, locking, leader election, and so on. Tendermint is in essence similar software, but with two key differences. It is Byzantine fault tolerant, meaning it can only tolerate up to 1/3 of failures, but those failures can include arbitrary behavior, including hacking and malicious attacks. It does not specify a particular application like a fancy key-value store. Instead, it focuses on arbitrary state machine replication so developers can build the application logic that's right for them, from key-value store to cryptocurrency to e-voting platform and beyond. Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. Tendermint emerged in the tradition of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., with the goal of providing a more efficient and secure consensus algorithm than Bitcoin's proof of work. In the early days, Tendermint had a simple currency built in, to participate in consensus, users had to, quote, bond units of the currency into a security deposit, which could be revoked if they misbehaved. This is what made Tendermint's proof-of-stake algorithm. Since then, Tendermint has evolved to be a general-purpose blockchain consensus engine that can host arbitrary application states. That means it can be used as a plug-and-play replacement for the consensus engines of other blockchain software. So one can take the current Ethereum codebase, whether in Rust or Go or Haskell, and run it as a ACBI application using Tendermint consensus. Indeed, we did that with Ethereum, and we plan to do the same for Bitcoin, Zcash, and various other deterministic applications as well. Another example of cryptocurrency application built on Tendermint is the Cosmos network. Let's check on that one too. Other blockchain projects. Fabric takes a similar approach to Tendermint, but is more opinionated about how the state is managed and requires that all application behavior runs in potentially many Docker containers, modules it calls chain code. It uses an implementation of PBFT from a team at IBM that is augmented to handle potentially non-deterministic chain code. It is possible to implement this Docker-based behavior as a ABCI app in Tendermint through extending Tendermint to handle non-determinism remains for future work. Burrow is an implementation of the Ethereum virtual machine and Ethereum transaction mechanics with additional features for a name registry, permissions, and native contracts, and an alternative blockchain API. It uses Tendermint as its consensus engine and provides a particular application state. ABCI overview. The application blockchain interface allows for Byzantine fault tolerance replication of applications written in any programming language. Motivation. Thus far, all blockchain stacks, such as Bitcoin, have had a monolithic design. That is, each blockchain stack is a single program that handles all the concerns of a decentralized ledger. This includes peer-to-peer connectivity, the mempool broadcasting of transactions, consensus on the most recent block, account balances, Turing complete contracts, user-level permissions, etc. Using a monolithic architecture is typically bad practice in computer science. It makes it difficult to reuse components of the code, and attempts to do so result in complex maintenance procedures for forks of the codebase. This is especially true when the codebase is not modular in design and suffers from spaghetti code. Another problem with monolithic design is that it limits you to the language of the blockchain stack, or vice versa. In the case of Ethereum, which supports a Turing-complete bytecode virtual machine, it limits you to languages that compile down to that bytecode. Today, those are Serpent and Solidity. In contrast, our approach is to decouple the consensus engine and peer-to-peer layers from the details of the application state of the particular blockchain application. We do this by abstracting away the details of the application to an interface, which is implemented as a socket protocol. Thus, we have an interface, the application blockchain interface, and its primary implementation, the Tendermint socket protocol, or Teaspoon. Intro to ABCI. Tendermint Core, the consensus engine, communicates with the application via a socket protocol that satisfies the ABCI. To draw an analogy, let's talk about a well-known cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency blockchain where each node maintains a fully audited, unspent transaction output UTXO database. If one wanted to create a Bitcoin-like system on top of ABCI Tendermint Core would be responsible for sharing blocks and transactions between nodes and establishing a canonical immutable order of transactions, the blockchain. The application would be responsible for maintaining the UTXO database, validating cryptographic signatures of transactions, preventing transactions from spending non-existent transactions, and allowing clients to query the UTXO database. Tendermint is able to decompose the blockchain design by offering a very simple API, i.e. the ABCI, between the application process and consensus process. The ABCI consists of three primary message types that get delivered from the core to the application. The application replies with corresponding response messages. The messages are specified here, ABCI message types, and we're not going to go into that. The deliver TX message is the workhorse of the application. Each transaction in the blockchain is delivered with this message. The application needs to validate each transaction received with the deliver TX message against the current state, application protocol, and the cryptographic credentials of the transaction. A validated transaction needs to update the application state by binding a value into a key value store or by updating the UTXO database, for instance. The check TX message is similar to deliver TX, but it's only for validating transactions. Tendermint's core mempool first checks the validity of a transaction with check TX and only relays valid transactions to its peers. For instance, an application may check an incrementing sequence number in the transaction and return an error upon check TX if the sequence number is old. Alternatively, they might use a capabilities-based system that requires capabilities to be renewed with each transaction. The commit message is used to compute a cryptographic commitment to the current application state to be placed into the next block header. This has some handy properties. Inconsistencies in updating that state will now appear as blockchain forks, which catches a whole class of programming errors. This also simplifies the development of secure, lightweight clients, such as Merkle hash proofs, can be verified by checking against the block hash and that the block hash is signed by a quorum. There can be multiple ABCI socket connections to an application. Tendermint Core creates 3 ABCI connections to the application, one for the validating of transactions when broadcasting to the mempool, one for the consensus engine to run block proposals, and one more for querying the application state. It's probably evident that application designers need to be very carefully designing their message handlers to create a blockchain that does anything useful, but this architecture provides a place to start. The diagram below illustrates the flow of messages via ABCI, and I'm not gonna read through that. A note on determinism. The logic for blockchain transaction processing must be deterministic. If the application logic weren't deterministic, consensus would not be reached among the Tendermint Core replica nodes. Solidity on Ethereum is a great language of choice for blockchain applications because, among other reasons, it is a completely deterministic programming language. However, it is also possible to create deterministic applications using existing popular languages like Java, C++, Python, or Go. Game programmers and blockchain developers are already familiar with creating deterministic programs by avoiding sources of non-determinism such as 1. Random number generators, without deterministic seeding. Number 2, race conditions on threads or avoiding threads altogether. Number 3, the system clock. Number 4, uninitialized memory in unsafe programming languages like C or C++. 5, floating point arithmetic. My apologies, sir. Arithmetic. 6, language features that are random, ergo map iteration in Go. While programmers can avoid non-determinism by being careful, it is also possible to create a special linter or static analyzer for each language to check for determinism. In the future, we may work with partners to create such tools. Consensus overview. Tendermint is an easy-to-understand, mostly asynchronous BFT consensus protocol. The protocol follows a simple state machine that looks like this, and it gives us a nice little diagram there that we're not going to read through. Participants in the protocol are called validators. They take turns proposing blocks of transactions and voting on them. Blocks are committed to in a chain with one block at each height. A block may fail to be committed, in which case the protocol moves to the next round and a new validator gets to propose a block for that height. 2 stages of voting are required to successfully commit a block. We call them pre-vote and pre-commit. A block is committed when more than 2/3 of validators pre-commit for the same block in the same round. There's a picture of a couple doing the polka because validators are doing something like a polka dance. When more than 2/3 of the validators pre-vote for the same block, we call that a polka. Every pre-commit must be justified by a polka in the same round. Validators may fail to commit a block for a number of reasons. The current proposer may be offline, or the network may be slow. Tendermint allows them to establish that a validator should be skipped. Validators wait a small amount of time to receive a complete proposal block from the proposer before voting to move to the next round. This reliance on a timeout is what makes Tendermint a weakly synchronous protocol rather than an asynchronous one. However, the rest of the protocol is asynchronous, and validators only make progress after hearing from more than 2/3 of the validator set. A simplifying element of Tendermint is that it uses the same mechanism to commit a block as it does to skip to the next round. Assuming less than 1/3 of the validators are Byzantine, Tendermint guarantees that safety will never be violated. That is, validators will never commit conflicting blocks at the same height. To do this, it introduces a few locking rules which modulate which paths can be followed in the flow diagram. Once a validator pre-commits a block, it is locked on that block. Then, number 1, it must pre-vote for the block it is locked on. Number 2, it can only unlock and pre-commit for a new block if there is a polka for that block in a later round. Stake. In many systems, not all validators will have the same weight in the consensus protocol. Thus, we are not so much interested in 1/3 or 2/3 of the validators, but in those proportions of the total voting power, which may not be uniformly distributed across individual validators. Since Tendermint can replicate arbitrary applications, it is possible to define a currency and demonstrate the voting power in that currency. When voting power is denominated in a native currency, the system is often referred to as proof of stake. Validators can be forced by logic in the application to bond their currency holdings in a security deposit that can be destroyed if they're found to misbehave in the consensus protocol. This adds an economic element to the security of the protocol, allowing one to quantify the cost of violating the assumption that less than 1/3 of the voting power is Byzantine. The Cosmos network is designed to use this proof of stake mechanism across an array of cryptocurrencies implemented as ABCI applications. The following diagram of Tendermint is in a technical nutshell. Blah, blah, blah. We're not going to go through all that. Another good diagram. And so, yeah, that is Tendermint. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I would have to see it in function to get a better idea of whether or not I think it would work, or how useful it would be. But I don't know. We'll find out how it will work as far as this Libra clone or fork that these guys are planning to run on top of it or run on it. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And I've been dying to play some Red Fang, and so here it is. Blood Like Cream, here on Coin Metal. And that was Beastie Boys with Sabotage. So I dug just a little bit deeper, and we got a little bit of time left before the end of the show, so I figured I'd do just a little bit more scrounging here. And this Tendermint business, it's tied up with Cosmos, and I've heard of Cosmos, but I have no idea about anything about it. So here it is. This is on cosmos.network/intro. Introduction. What is Cosmos? Strictly speaking, Cosmos is a decentralized network of independent parallel blockchains, each powered by BFT consensus algorithms like Tendermint consensus. In other words, Cosmos is an ecosystem of blockchains that, they give us an underline here, so let's see exactly what they mean by blockchain. According to them, a blockchain can be described as a distributed digital ledger maintained by a set of validators that remains correct, even if some of the validators, less than a third, are malicious. That's not exactly what the rest of the world calls a blockchain, but that's what they're calling it in their context. Anyway, continuing. They can scale and interoperate with each other. Before Cosmos, blockchains were siloed and unable to communicate with each other. They were hard to build and could only handle a small amount of transactions per second. That's not exactly true. Cosmos solves these problems with a new technical vision. In order to understand this vision, we need to go back to the fundamentals of blockchain technology. What is a blockchain? A blockchain can be described as a digital ledger maintained by a set of validators that remains correct even if some of the validators, less than a third, are malicious. Each party stores a copy of the ledger on their computer and updates it according to the rules defined by the protocol when they receive blocks of transactions. The goal of blockchain technology is to make sure that the ledger is correctly replicated, meaning that each honest party sees the same version of the ledger at any given moment. The main benefit of blockchain technology is the ability for parties to share a ledger without having to rely on a centralized authority, or a central authority rather. Blockchains are decentralized. The first and most famous application of blockchain technology today is Bitcoin, a decentralized currency. Actually, that's complete bullshit. Their concentration on the blockchain itself is bullshit. They're just trying to catch on to the fucking marketing bullshit going on. The main thing that makes cryptocurrencies work is miners. The blockchain is a product of the work of the miners. So again, this whole concentration on the quote-unquote blockchain itself, and not so much concentration on the source of the blockchain, it's annoying to me because it's kind of a big omission. You know, according to their version of things, they could be the only block producers in this quote-unquote blockchain, and they're calling it decentralized because I don't know why. Because that's just a word that's associated with cryptocurrencies, and so they stick it on theirs. I don't know. Continuing on. Now that we have a better understanding of what a blockchain is from a high-level perspective, let us look at the definition of blockchain with a more technical angle. A blockchain is a deterministic state machine replicated on full nodes that retains consensus safety as long as less than a third of its maintainers are Byzantine. That's complete bullshit right there, too. Let's break this down. A state machine is just a fancy word for a program that holds a state and modifies it when it receives inputs. There is a state which can represent different things depending on the application, ergo, token balances for a cryptocurrency, and transactions that modify the state, ergo, by subtracting balances from one account and adding them to another. Number 2, deterministic means that if you replay the same transactions from the same genesis state, you will always end up with the same resultant state. Consensus safety refers to the fact that every honest node on which the state machine is replicated should see the same state at the same time. When nodes receive blocks of transactions, they verify that it is valid, meaning that each transaction is valid and that the block itself was validated by more than 2/3 of the maintainers, called validators. In every other cryptocurrency, they're called miners. Safety will be guaranteed as long as less than a third of the validators are Byzantine, i.e. malicious. But what if more than 1/3 are? From an architecture standpoint, blockchains can be divided into 3 conceptual layers. Application, responsible for updating the state given a set of transactions, i.e. processing transactions. Networking, responsible for the propagation of transactions and consensus-related messages. And consensus enables nodes to agree on the current state of the system. The state machine is the same as the application layer. It defines the state of the application and the state transition functions. The other layers are responsible for replicating the state machine on all the nodes that connect to the network. How does Cosmos fit in the broader blockchain ecosystem? The Bitcoin story, Blockchain 1.0. To understand how Cosmos fits the blockchain ecosystem, we need to go back to the beginning of the blockchain story. The first blockchain was Bitcoin. No. The first blockchain was the product of the miners mining the first cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer digital currency created in 2008 that used a novel consensus mechanism known as proof of work. It was the first decentralized application on a blockchain. Wrong. It was the first decentralized cryptocurrency that produced a blockchain, or that was maintained via, or state maintained via blockchain. Anyway, continuing. Soon people started to realize the potential of decentralized applications, and the desire to build new ones emerged in the community. At the time, there were 2 options to develop decentralized applications: either fork the Bitcoin code base or build on top of it. However, the Bitcoin codebase was very monolithic. All three layers, networking, consensus, and application, were mixed together. Yeah, that's by intent. Additionally, the Bitcoin scripting language was limited and not user-friendly. That's not true either. There was a need for better tools, and that's not true either. Well, there is a need for your tool. Better, worse, that's for the market to decide. Continuing. The Ethereum story, Blockchain 2.0. In 2014, Ethereum came in with a new proposition for building decentralized applications. There would be a single blockchain where people would be able to deploy any kind of program. Ethereum achieved this by turning the application layer into a virtual machine called the Ethereum Virtual Machine. This virtual machine was able to process programs called smart contracts that any developer could deploy to the Ethereum blockchain in a permissionless fashion. This new approach allowed thousands of developers to start building decentralized applications, dApps. However, limitations to this approach soon became apparent and still persist to this day. Limitation 1. Scalability. The first limitation is scaling. Decentralized applications built on top of Ethereum are inhibited by a shared rate of 15 transactions per second. This is due to the fact that Ethereum still uses proof of work and that Ethereum dApps compete for the limited resources of a single blockchain. Actually, they are competing for their percentage of the gas limit for the block. It's equivalent to the megabyte limit on the Bitcoin blockchain. Continuing on. Limitation 2. Usability. The second limitation is the relatively low flexibility granted to developers because the EVM is a sandbox that needs to accommodate all use cases. It optimizes for the average use case. This means that developers have to make compromises on the design and efficiency of their application. For example, requiring use of the account model in a payments platform where a UTXO model may be preferred. Among other things, they are limited to a few programming languages and cannot implement automatic execution of code. Yeah, that's because everybody has to vote on this data set. Limitation 3. Sovereignty. The third limitation is that each application is limited in sovereignty because they all share the same underlying environment. That's a compromise of using somebody else's shit, dude. Essentially, this creates two layers of governance. That all of the application and that of the application and that of the underlying environment. The former is limited by the latter. If there is a bug in the application, nothing can be done about it without the approval of the governance of the Ethereum platform itself. If the application requires a new feature in the EVM, it again has to rely entirely on the governance of the Ethereum platform to accept it. These limitations are not specific to Ethereum, but to all blockchains trying to create a single platform that would fit all use cases. This is where Cosmos comes into play. And we're going to step off of this thing right there. I just wanted to give myself a little bit of time before the end of the episode to talk about this. I think one of the problems with projects like this is that they make, I believe, errant assumptions about the cryptocurrency space and about projects in particular, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum. Bitcoin and Ethereum are limited only by the imagination of their users. So that is to say that if miners are limited in their expectation of what Bitcoin can do, they'll do things like limit themselves to mining 1 megabyte blocks. They may in fact decide at some point or another to submit a BIP of their own for other miners to potentially adopt to their own GitHub or other repository, and decide to be able to try and accommodate bigger blocks. So they extend the effective block size limit to, say, 8 megabytes. The miners are perfectly capable of doing this at any time. But what you have to consider is that for that 1 megabyte block, that's the 1 megabyte is what limits the transactions per second. And so currently the network is limited to roughly about 3. Now, if that were to be amplified by 8 times, now we're talking about 24 transactions per second. And that in itself changes the entire argument and the entire value proposition of Bitcoin, because suddenly transactions would be cheaper because the scale for them would be magnified by 8 times as well. So the volume of transactions goes up by 8 times. They become 8 times cheaper, or roughly 8 times cheaper. And there could be allowance for fudge factor there and steadying of the transaction fee rate. It's kind of a progressive thing because of the replaced by fee feature, whereby certain transactions could be bumped out and replaced with more profitable transactions, meaning a higher rate of satoshis per byte to be included in the block. So anyway, like I said, I think that the error here is that they assume that there's a number of blockchains because that there's something wrong with one other currency or another, and it's not true. It's just in the limitations of people's use. If Ethereum can't do a certain thing cheaply enough, people will spawn their own cryptocurrency to facilitate that need. That's why most altcoins exist, because Bitcoin cannot achieve what it's supposed to achieve cheaply enough to be tolerable. Meaning that the computer hardware in front of you right now, if you were to be mining Bitcoin back before ASICs and before GPUs and FPGAs and all that other shit, your computer would be perfectly capable of operating as a miner on the first Bitcoin network. And potentially profitably. But when you think about it in those terms, you can understand why there's so much inhibition on the scale of the network. It's because not everybody else in the world can afford GPUs and ASIC machines to dedicate to mining. Whereas if it were limited to just CPU mining, everybody in the world that has a desktop is now a potential miner. And you can see there where that would increase the potential for adoption. But that's where Bitcoin has been kind of hobbled, where we're not seeing as much drive to try and incorporate CPUs in the market. And what has to be understood there is that 1 million CPU users out there could be providing enough hashing power to the network to make a difference in what the consensus rules are. So if 1 million miners out there, CPU miners, were to come online tomorrow and say, we want 8 megabyte blocks and we will mine 8 megabyte blocks, that would be enough to shift the preference of the market. And again, it would adjust the entire value proposition of using Bitcoin or even mining Bitcoin. And it is with that I'd like to wrap this one up. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I'm having a little bit of trouble picking one, because I've got so much good stuff in my picks these days. I love it. But let's see here. What should it be? What should it be? I know a good short one here. Oh, where is it? A Shogun Named Marcus by Clutch, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and you all have an excellent evening. Good night.